What if your comfort is the enemy's strategy? What if the greatest spiritual war is happening while everything around you seems calm? In a palace where God's name was never spoken, a young orphan girl was drafted into a silent battlefield, one that would determine whether an entire nation lived or died. This isn't just a Bible story. This is a prophetic warning and a divine invitation. Because when Satan plots in the shadows, God positions his warriors in disguise. She wasn't born noble. She never trained for battle. Esther was just a Jewish orphan raised in exile, a foreign girl living under the shadow of the greatest empire on earth. But unknown to her, God was orchestrating a covert operation. While kings drank from golden cups and nobles plotted behind silk curtains, heaven was prepping a young woman to become a weapon of deliverance. Yet Esther was not a heroine of her own making. She was simply a vessel of God's purpose, exalted not by power, but by his providence. In the days of King Xerxes, ruler of 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia, pride and power sat heavily on a throne in Susa. A 6-month feast flaunted his greatness. Wine poured endlessly, and in drunken arrogance he summoned Queen Vashti to parade her beauty. When she refused, she was dethroned, setting in motion a chain reaction designed by the eternal hand of God. To replace her, fair young women were gathered from every corner of the empire, pampered for 12 months, trained, groomed, prepared for one night with the king. Among them was Hadassah, now called Esther, a young Jewish woman who carried a destiny bigger than every jeweled crown in Persia. She did not demand luxury, for humility was her sword. God gave her favor in the eyes of all who saw her, and when she finally stood before Xerxes, he was captivated. Esther was crowned queen, not for her comfort, but for a covert calling. Meanwhile, her cousin Mordecai, a gatekeeper, uncovered a deadly plot. 2 royal guards planned to assassinate the king. Mordecai sounded the alarm through Esther. The plot was stopped, but his heroism was quietly recorded and forgotten. No reward, no promotion, just his name written in a book, because heaven's timing was not ready yet. Then rose Haman the Agagite, a power-hungry official poisoned with ancient hatred for the Jews. Elevated above all other nobles, he demanded worship. But Mordecai refused to bow. Fury consumed Haman. He didn't just want revenge, he wanted genocide. Casting lots to pick a day of extermination, he manipulated Xerxes into signing a decree of death. On the 13th day of the 12th month, every Jew, young or old, must be slaughtered. Across the empire, terror spread. Sackcloth, ashes, wailing, mourning. Every Jewish household fell face down, because while men prepared swords, God's people prepared their spirits. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Mordecai sent word to Esther, commanding her to go before the king and plead for her people. But even queens could not approach Xerxes without invitation. Doing so meant certain death unless he extended the golden scepter. Esther hesitated. Fear gripped her. She'd been quiet, hidden, safe, but Mordecai's response shattered her comfort. Do not think you will escape. If you remain silent, deliverance will arise from another place. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Faith ignited, fear broke. Esther replied, gather all the Jews and fast for me 3 days. Then I will go, even if I perish. This was more than courage. It was spiritual warfare. Fasting replaced feasting. Weakness replaced cosmetics. Heaven replaced politics. And on the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes, stepped into the inner court, and stared death in the face. The king saw her and raised the golden scepter. Over 2 suspense-filled banquets, she waited for heaven's cue. Then, in a moment of divine timing, she exposed Haman's plot to the king. We have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. Anger exploded in Xerxes. Haman was seized and hanged on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. Thus, God flipped the script in a single day, but the decree of death remained. Persian law could not be reversed. So Esther risked her life a second time and secured permission for a new decree giving Jews the right to defend themselves. Across 127 provinces, Jews rose not with aggression, but with holy resistance. Purim became a celebration of survival, proof that even when God seems silent, his fingerprints are working behind every closed door. Through Esther, God preserved his covenant people so that his promise of salvation through Christ would not be cut off. In her hidden courage, we glimpse the foreshadowing of the greater deliverer, Jesus Christ, who would one day stand in the gap for all humanity. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Mordecai rose from unnoticed gatekeeper to royal authority, not because he chased power, but because he remained faithful. Esther's name echoed across history, not because she wore a crown, but because she refused to stay silent when silence meant surrender. So what about you? Perhaps you too are positioned behind enemy lines, not by accident, but by assignment. Perhaps your current workplace, hardship, or silence is not punishment, but preparation. Satan still plots in the shadows. He still whispers genocide of destinies, families, ministries. Yet God still uses unexpected people in unexpected places to overturn impossible decrees. But unlike Esther, we live on the other side of the cross. Our deliverer has already come. Jesus Christ is the true King who extended not a golden scepter, but his own pierced hands, granting us life when we deserve death. Question is, will you stay comfortable or will you stand in the gap? Because the God who saved a nation through one hidden woman still writes deliverance stories today. And in Christ, the greatest deliverance story has already been written. But the next chapter of faith may be yours.